Alright, today we're going to be talking about Avatar The Last Airbender. We're going to be talking about the full entire timeline. I'm going to try and explain this as simply as possible. I'm going to try and make this not complicated at all. So without any more being said, let's get right into it. Alright, before we start the entire Avatar The Last Airbender timeline, there's many different things I'm going to say, such as BA and AA. It's important that you guys remember these kind of terms so that you don't get confused along the way. Alright, so it all starts off at 10,000 years BA. So BA means before Aang's birth. Try to remember that. Roughly 10,000 years before the start of Avatar, The Last Airbender, the world was a misty wonderland of spirits, humans, and the lion turtles, the last of whom were tasked with protecting humanity. It was on their mammoth shells that humans huddled together, venturing into the spirit wilds beyond only when necessary. To protect them on those occasional journeys, the lion turtles granted humans the power of bending for the duration of their time in the wilds. The system was broken, however, when a human named Wan used firebending for selfish ends and was banished to the wilds in punishment. His exile became a journey in which he encountered Rava, the primordial spirit of light and peace, and Vatu, the spirit of darkness and chaos. Wan, tricked into freeing Vatu, merged with Rava in an effort to undo his mistake and keep Vatu from flooding the world with malice. They succeeded, and their bond was made permanent, making Wan the very first Avatar. Thus, empowered, Wan sealed off the polar portals that link the spirit and the human worlds. In so doing, Wan created the foundations for the world of Avatar as we know it, and set out to safeguard its future. 1,000s of years BA, the foreign nations form. Remember, BA is before Aang. That's the last time I'm going to remind you guys, so you better remember. Thousands of years passed between the era of Wan and that of Avatar, the last Airbender's heroes, in which the foreign nations as fans would come to know them less into their familiar shape. The water tribes, originally concentrated in the North Pole, split into two nations, which a splintered third settled into the Foggy Swamp. Centuries of tribal warfare, fortress building, and subterranean exploration created the Earth Kingdom, united under a single monarch. The Sun Warriors would go on to teach Aang and Zuko the dancing dragon form, grew, declined, and finally settled into the obscure existence glimpsed in the Firebending Masters, while the archipelago that would become the Fire Nation was brought together during the Unification Wars. In the midst of this upheaval, bending, once possibly only through the lion turtles, was rediscovered and refined. Firebenders learned through observing dragons, waterbenders through studying the tidal pull of the moon, airbenders through their bonds with the sky bison, and earthbenders through their forms, disciplines, and styles were created, explored, and advanced from lightning generation to literal fire. In the case of the legendary Guru Legima, though many years of this era are heavy with warfare and famine, so too are they bustling with exploration, adventure, and spirituality. 300 years BA, the era of Avatar Kyoshi. 300 years prior to the events of Avatar The Last Airbender, Avatar Kyoshi rose to power. Though she would become a formidable enforcer of justice, she was born to an infamous pair of criminals who left her in the care of strangers who, upon learning of her parents' eventual death, abandoned her on the streets to starve. Years of deprivation, study, and conflict ensued, molding Kyoshi into an avatar as celebrated as she was feared. Her most well-known exploits happened later in her reign, the creation of Kyoshi Island and the founding of Dai Li, the cultural authority of Ba Sing Se, who, by the time Aang encountered them, acted as a brutal secret police force. The former event, in which she bent the earth down to its magma to split off the tip of a peninsula and make an island, was to keep the village located there safe from Chin, a fearsome conqueror. The latter act was in response to a peasant uprising and would go on to be seen as one of Kyoshi's greatest mistakes. She was a complicated figure, her legacy up for debate from all corners, but there is no disputing the massive effect she had upon her heroes centuries after her death. 100 years BA, the era of Avatar Goku. Roku. When Kyoshi's long life finally came to a close, the next avatar was born, Roku, a noble son of the Fire Nation. Growing up beside Sozin, his best friend and heir to the throne, his life was largely untroubled until he was revealed as the Avatar at the age of 16. Years of training ensued, during which Sozin became Fire Lord, and yet the two remained as close as brothers. They reunited, reconnected, and when the time came for Roku to marry, it was Sozin who acted as best man. But Sozin's ambitions had grown with every passing year. He revealed his plans for world conquest to Roku, who was horrified. No matter how benevolent Sozin claimed his intentions to be, the two split, passing decades without contact. When the volcano crowning Roku's island home erupted, Sozin did rush to his friend's aid, only to let him die in the ashes. Upon realizing that Roku's death would allow him to carry out his vision of globe-spanning rule, hundreds of miles away, a boy named Aang was born in the southern area. Finally! Oh my god! He saw the Fire Lord's intentions and the mess they would make of his childhood. 12 years AA. So AA means after Aang's birth. The Avatar disappears. The years between Roku's death and Sozin's destruction of the air nomads were, from Aang's point of view, peaceful ones. An eager student, he mastered airbending with enthusiasm and an innovative spirit, topping off his years of study with the invention of the air scooter, raised by Monk Gyatso. Living in harmony with the sky bison, playing games with his friends, these were gentle days, brought to a brutal end when the temple's elders, fearful of global unrest, told Aang of his avatar destiny. Overwhelmed, Aang ran off alongside Appa, his bonded bison, only to be thrown into the midst of a violent storm. Terrified, Aang went into the avatar state, encasing himself and Appa within a massive iceberg. Aang was, by all accounts, missing, and so there was no avatar to confront Fire Lord Sozin when he harnessed the power of the Great Comet, later renamed Sozin's Comet, to deliver a devastating first strike in the 100 Years' War. The genocide of the air nomads, Sozin, knowing they were the nation to which the current avatar had been born, destroyed them utterly in outrage that would spur the Earth Kingdom and the Water Tribes into action against the Fire Nation. For all the slaughter, the prime target remained at large. Sozin would write years later of his failure to capture the avatar, who he knew to be hiding out there somewhere, the Last Airbender. 12 to 112 years AA, the 100-Year War. Aang proceeded to spend 100 years in the ice. What did you say? In its time of greatest need. Fire Lord Azulon succeeded Sozin, continuing his campaign of conquest with bloodthirsty zeal. The Southern Water Tribe was devastated during these years, subject to an assault that destroyed their central city, kidnapping the waterbenders and led to decades of violent raiding which would eventually claim the life of Kia, Katara, and Sokka's mother. The Fire Nation's attempts to destroy the Earth Kingdom went less smoothly, though enormous swaths of the nation were indeed decimated and put under Fire Nation control. Ba Sing Se, the legendary capital city, resisted capture. General Iroh, Crown Prince of the Fire Nation, had received a vision in his youth that appeared to bode well himself, conquering Ba Sing Se at last. Empowered by his prophecy and the apex of his legendary skill, he laid siege to the city's outermost wall with all the might of the Fire Nation army behind him. 100 years AA, the Fire Nation's royal family splinters. Though the Earth Kingdom's forces fought mightily, Ba Sing Se's outermost wall was eventually breached. This was hailed as a tremendous victory until General Iroh received word that his son had died in combat. Devastated, Iroh took stock of his battery army, their flagging morale, and his own demoralization. After 600 days, the siege was brought to an end, the Fire Nation withdrew, and Ba Sing Se was left unconquered. Ozai, Iroh's younger brother, sensed an opportunity to advance his own position amidst this tragedy. As Iroh was returning to the Fire Nation in disgrace and lacking in heir, he suggested that their father, Fire Lord Azulon, establish him as their heir to the throne. Azulon was outraged and commanded Ozai to murder his firstborn son Zuko in penance. Ursa, Zuko's mother and Ozai's wife, conspired with her husband in a desperate attempt to save her son, concocting a poison which killed Azulon in his sleep. Ozai was crowned Fire Lord, but Ursa was banished, leaving Zuko without a protector. In a few short years, Fire Lord Ozai would punish his son for speaking out of turn in his war room for facing him in a Republic duel, permanently scarring his face and sending him on what he believed to be a fruitless search for the Avatar alongside his uncle Iroh. Ozai's power was cemented, and all who threatened his rule expunged. 112 AA, the Avatar returned. I'm back. When Aang was finally woken from his century-long slumber, it wasn't by the Fire Nation forces so eager to ferret him out of hiding, but by Katara, a girl out practicing the waterbending her mother had died to protect from the Fire Nation's clutches. Aang emerged onto a world utterly unlike the one he had left, yet still he found himself as weighed down by responsibility, if anything, more so. When Katara showed him a captured Fire Nation ship, brought down decades ago by waterbenders who would be kidnapped in retaliation, Aang reeled in confusion. Hadn't he only been in the ice for a week, a month at most? If he really had to stretch it, Katara deduced that Aang had been effectively dead to the world for 100 years. The four nations were in turmoil and his absence was in part at fault. and so began Avatar: The Last Airbender. I would go on to learn of his people's obliteration, the dominance of the Fire Nation, and the long cruel reach of the war into even the most remote places. Alliances would shift, battles were fought, and spirits were negotiated with. Some people like Jet became casualties, while others like Toph emerged from the crucible of war as benders of unparalleled skill. Aang, as Avatar, led them all, the responsibility of his role at last assumed. 113 years AA. The 100-Year War begins. Ends. Only 1 year passed between Aang's emergence from the iceberg and the end of the 100-Year War. But oh, what a year it was. In its 365 days, the events of Avatar: The Last Airbender unfolded, from the siege of the North Northern Tribe to the final battle of Wulong Forest. At the end of it all, the Fire Lord Ozai was defeated, his bending taken away in unprecedented use of Avatar's connection to the origin of all bending. In meeting a lion turtle who revealed the secrets of energy bending, Aang hearkened back to the era of Rava, tens of thousands of years in the past, to save his modern world. His 100-year absence might have thrown the world further out of balance than it had ever before, but in his victory over Ozai, he restored it in legendary style. Thus disposed, Firelord Ozai was succeeded by Firelord Zuko. Zuko's ascension was risky, predicted on his worth as a newcomer and idealist. As his uncle referred to him, not a virtue the Fire Nation was then holding in high regard, and a dramatic departure from the last 4 or 5 lords. But the throne was his, and so began a new age of repair, reconciliation, and above all things, peace! Alright guys, and that is it. Well, technically it's not, but that is it for Avatar: The Last Airbender. If you guys do want me to make a part 2 where we go over the timeline of Korra, then make sure to comment down below if you want that, like, and share with your friends, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
寂しいかの血中うのすに姫ためね壁にシャイトしみにたとたばころしみにパソ前へちままきとたばちまにもってそうレグゼ